What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This here is Legitical Response. Now, it would be an understatement to call the 2024 presidential cycle, slightly crazy. It would be quite an understatement. I mean, look at everything we've had. We've had two geriatrics running for president. One of them is pretty good. The other one dropped out of the race. After the primaries, you got 4 months left, he drops out of the race, puts his vice president up as the candidate, as if you could just do that, as if campaigns work the same way the presidency works, right? Like, the voters get no say. So that's crazy. We had an assassination attempt. We had one of the candidates get indicted into oblivion, for crying out loud. One of the candidates might go to jail on September 18th, as a matter of fact. So this presidential cycle has been just crazy. It's an understatement to say that. Now, we've got some more things coming in. We've got a hot contender for the third independent party coming in. Now, we've covered all the lawsuits covering, RFK Jr., Cornel West, Jill Stein, and it's coming from nothing but Democrats. I've been covering those over the past week. They're just insane that it's only the Democrat Party suing all these people to keep them off the ballot. And it's kind of unbelievable. The party of democracy is trying to make less democracy, folks. That's exactly what they're trying to do. And it's insane to me to look at the Democrat Party and everything that is going on, right? Look at Joe Biden dropping out and them just installing Kamala Harris. No democracy there. And then the Democrat Party just going, lawfare turned up to 11, just going after candidate after candidate after candidate. Once again, removing democracy from the equation, right? Once again, this is the party of democracy, y'all. Let's get into this. This could be a major disruption for this presidential cycle, right? And I'm saying this after stating what I have just stated. RFK Jr. running mate Shanahan says they're considering endorsing Trump. Not just endorsing Trump, as we're going to read, but dropping out of the race and actually endorsing Trump and trying to get a spot on his administration. That's going to be insane if that happens. And you know what? I think it's going to happen now that I've read this story out. But let's get into it, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But Let's get it, y'all. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s running mate, Nicole Shanahan, said the Kennedy campaign is considering dropping out of the race and endorsing former President Donald Trump, while framing the choice through her hope of reducing the risk of Vice President Kamala Harris becoming president. So they know that Kamala Harris is a threat to democracy, y'all. They can look at the DNC, they can look at the Democrat Party and tell these people don't like democracy, folks. They want to rule everybody with an iron fist. They've gone full insane leftist mode, communism, all that good stuff. As a matter of fact, they're communists, fascists, and Nazis all rolled up into one. Right? Now, minus the Nazi part, of course. I'm not going to call them Nazis, but authoritarians for sure. In an interview with podcast host Tim Bilyeu, posted on Tuesday, Shanahan acknowledged the Kennedy campaign's recent conversations with the Trump campaign, which have centered on the possibility of Kennedy endorsing Trump in exchange for a role in Trump's administration should he win. She framed their decision on whether to endorse Trump around its impact on Harris's chance of victory in November, arguing Kennedy pulls more votes from Trump than Harris. And at this point, I would have to say that's a yay, because you're not going to take any Republicans voting for RFK Jr. I highly doubt that, even the never-Trumpers, right? But you've got a lot of independents out there, and there's a lot of people that kind of fall in the middle. They're moderate, maybe a little bit left-leaning, maybe a little bit right-leaning, and I've always thought, RFK Jr. was a Democrat. He tried to get on the ballot as a Democrat. So you look at this, and you think, okay, why are they saying that RFK Jr. is going to take away from Trump? That makes no sense once you realize he's a Democrat. But when you listen to the guy speak and you listen to some of his policy positions, right? Some of his political positions, blah, 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 you just hear him speak. You're like, holy crap. This dude isn't a modern day Democrat. This is a 1980s Democrat. This guy's actually sane. He actually knows what's going on. As a matter of fact, I stated yesterday in a video, if Trump wasn't in the race and we had some establishment Republican or something like that, I would probably vote for RFK Jr., even knowing that he's probably not going to win. Just as a protest, because RFK Jr. aligns with a lot of my values. As a matter of fact, he doesn't like the bureaucratic state. He's wanting to go after all these, the big pharmaceutical companies and all that garbage. The guy knows what he's talking about. He's very smart. He's very smart. He's got a good head on his shoulders, and he's pointing in the right direction. So after looking at everything, I can now see how RFK would take away from Trump. Because you got a lot of moderates out there, right? You got a lot of people that just look at Trump and they're like, the corporate press is constantly lying about this dude. Of course, a lot of those same people don't even know the lies that has been told about Donald Trump. They might actually believe some of the lies, as a matter of fact, because nobody ever debunks the corporate press out there except for people like me, right? But so it's feasible now that I see that. Okay. So now that RFK Jr. is talking about Kamala Harris as a threat to democracy type of stuff going on, talking about teaming up with Trump, that could be a major disruption and exactly what the Trump campaign needs. There's two options that we're looking at, and one is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Tim Walz presidency, because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump. That kind of didn't make sense. Or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump. Shanahan weighed the choice to stay in the race through a similar framework elsewhere in the podcast, debating whether Trump's openness to issues core to the Kennedy campaign, particularly vaccine efficacy and safety, make endorsing Trump a more appealing option than the risk of Harris winning. So they're outright saying that Kamala Harris, there's a big risk to her winning as far as freedom and independence and democracy and all this garbage. The question is the risk of Harris-Walz presidency worth us staying in? And that's the question we have to ask ourselves right now, she said. When asked about the role Kennedy could play in a future Trump administration, Shanahan speculated that her running mate may be open to taking a role as Secretary of Health and Human Services in a future administration, and said she has high hopes he'll be able to oversee the department. As a matter of fact, I believe that. I think he would be a good Secretary of State. The dude is smart, y'all. He doesn't, like, the big turnoff with RFK Jr., and the reason I think he's polling so low, and it shouldn't be this, but it is his voice. He's got some weird, I forget what it's called. I'm sorry. I apologize for not being able to remember what the condition is that it's messed up with his throat or whatever that causes him to speak the way he does. But I believe that's the only reason that he is polling so low. Because you go and listen to the guy talk, you listen to the substance of what he's trying to tell everybody and what all of his policy positions and all that, and it's like, oh crap, yeah, this guy's pretty good. This guy's really good, as a matter of fact. Shanahan's comments come after Kennedy's conversation with Trump last month raised questions about the future of his campaign after it was reported the two had discussed Kennedy dropping out and endorsing Trump. At the time, Kennedy insisted he was not dropping out of the race. And as a matter of fact, I almost covered that story. I saw the headline a couple weeks ago, or a month or so ago. It was a while back. And then I saw another one just a few days ago. And I didn't cover it, and I wish I would have now, because we're about to get into that. But it was talking about Kennedy dropping out of the race and trying to get on a Harris administration ticket. It's like, what? That makes absolutely no sense to me, after learning everything I've learned about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense. No. He told CNN outright that Joe Biden was a bigger threat to democracy than Donald Trump. Right? So he knows the threat to democracy that the Democrats, the establishment Democrats, pose. So he knows what's going on here. He's not going to join forces with those people, for crying out loud. Yet Kennedy remains far behind Trump and Harris in state and national polls and has failed to gain ground since Harris took over the top of the Democratic ticket in July. A Washington Post ABC News iPost poll conducted earlier this month found Harris at 47% support, Trump at 44% support, and Kennedy at 5%. When asked for comment about Shanahan's remarks, the Kennedy campaign directed CNN to a social media post from Kennedy on Tuesday, which read in part, "As always, I am willing to talk with any leaders of any political party to further the goals I have served for 40 years in my career and in this campaign." Shanahan noted at multiple points in the interview that Kennedy does not have a clear path to victory, even as she held out hope for some miracle that would allow them to qualify for ABC News's presidential debate on September 10th. Shanahan blamed opposition from Democratic groups, including the Democratic National Committee, for undermining their campaign, which turned us into a spoiler. Now, I've covered those stories at great length. You guys know it. Go check those out if you haven't seen those. You know, they're clearly labeled, right? They'll have RFK Jr. on the thumbnail. RFK Jr. right there, threat to democracy. I forget the titles of the videos. I'm sorry, y'all, but I've covered those stories. And it's not just RFK Jr. they're going after. They're going after their own, right? I talked about this the other day. Dean Phillips, as a matter of fact. They put him through the freaking ringer. They forced him to spend millions and millions of dollars in just lawsuits, right? Just to defend his candidacy to get on the ballot, for crying out loud. In the primary, for goodness sakes. Yes, in the primary. When you sit back and think about, okay, they're trying to keep him off the ballot in the primary? That's weird. Because it's an open primary, right? Like, you let the voters pick, and then, once you get past the primary and you're the nominee, sure, you want to take people off the ballot. It's underhanded as hell, and it's very anti-democratic, but, I'm looking at it from their point of view, right? They don't see the evil that is. They don't see the antithesis of democracy that is. They don't see it, I guess. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending millions and millions of campaign dollars, right? People go and donate to Act Blue. And that's what they choose to spend that money on, is lawsuits to make less democracy. It's insane. While Shanahan denied the Kennedy campaign is having conversations with Harris about the possibility of endorsing her campaign, she appeared to confirm reporting from CNN and other outlets that Kennedy had attempted to meet with Harris. And you see what they're doing here? You see exactly what they're doing. Okay, now, I did read that article, what I was talking about earlier, when I was talking about that there was news articles about RFK Jr. dropping out, endorsing Kamala Harris, and trying to get on that administration, right? I read that article out, and the reason I didn't cover it, and now I wish I would have, because it was just idle speculation. That's all it was. Straight up idle speculation. Right? Like, check it out. CNN has previously reported that Kennedy campaign had reached out to the Harris campaign to arrange a meeting to discuss the potential for a Kennedy endorsement in exchange for a position in her administration. Shanahan says, definitely not in talks with Harris, definitely never have brought up this idea of an endorsement with Harris, definitely have never brought up a cabinet position with Harris, she said. So it was idle speculation. And when you read out the story, when you read out the article, there was no concrete evidence anywhere. That's the main reason I didn't cover it. The main reason. Because I just read it and I'm like, this is just speculation. But they seemed certain about it, right? You know how the corporate press does. They love to weasel their way through the truth, around the truth, and sometimes just completely dispose of the truth and tell a straight-out lie, which is what that article was, a straight-out lie, because they were like, oh, Trump's doomed because of this. It was crazy. And once again, I wish I would have covered it, because God, I would have blew the lid off of this. If I would have only known that this article was going to come out Man, that would have been great. You know, that being said, we have offered to talk to everybody about what your policies are, who's going to be in your cabinet. Do you want to hear any of our takes on policy and what might work? Shanahan's comments appeared to shock some Kennedy supporters as clips from the interview circulated on social media. One vocal Kennedy backer, Michigan resident Bryce Lipscomb, said in a social media post he feels abandoned by the campaign after volunteering for it earlier this year. I have put a great deal of time and money into your campaign, he wrote in a post that has since been deleted. Right now, I feel taken advantage of. DNC Communications Advisor Liz Smith said Shanahan's comments lend credence to their claim that Kennedy's campaign is a spoiler to benefit Trump. What? Yeah, right. From the beginning of this race, we've said that RFK Jr. is nothing more than a spoiler for Donald Trump, and we're glad that his running mate is finally admitting it, she said. No, I'm sorry, that's not true whatsoever. Like, once again, just idle speculation coming from these people. You know, I've watched a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews of RFK Jr., and the dude's genuine. He's straight up genuine. He wants to be the president. I think he would make a pretty good president. I don't know if he would be any better than Donald Trump, to be honest with you. But, you know, he could be very comparable to Donald Trump. Now, there's been a lot of stuff come out about RFK Jr., you know, going with this and going with that. And, you know, his stance on, like, Columbus Day. I made an entire video covering that. About, like, come on, dude, this is woke. Why are you talking about this? But his attitude about it is like, I don't care. Call it whatever the hell you want. But, you know, that kind of attitude about culture war issues, you can't take those lightly because politics is downstream from culture, for crying out loud. So, you know, culture, you know, drives every freaking thing, right? We have these crazy outdated laws in this country, like in Florida. Like, I forget the exact law, but it's like people can't skydive on a Sunday or something like that, or women can't skydive on a Sunday. I forget. That's not what it is, but it's something to that effect. And nobody is going to enforce that, right? Or like a law that says the only place you can punch your wife for calling you a bastard or something like that is on the courthouse grounds, on the courthouse property. Laws like that have been on the books for 100, 150, 200 years that just don't get enforced because they don't make sense. That's what the culture does, right? Culture pushes politics, pushes law enforcement, pushes everything, right? If the police officers see something and they just they're like, oh, okay, that's just innocent, you know, whatever it is. They won't arrest anybody for it. They won't give them a ticket. None of that, right? So culture dictates policy, for sure. Culture dictates almost everything. That's why culture war issues, and that's why I was saddened by Kennedy just blowing off this Columbus Day take that he had. And I'm like, what are you doing, dude? And I got so many hate comments from RFK Jr. supporters. Like, and I'm like, dude, I like RFK Jr. That's why I'm griping. I'm criticizing the guy, right? It's just insane. You can't criticize somebody and still like that person, right? I criticize Donald Trump all the time because there is plenty room there for criticism for Donald Trump, as a matter of fact. But you can best believe that's who I'm voting for come November because he's the only one that makes sense right now, right? RFK's not going to win. So Donald Trump is the only one that makes sense. I was backing Vivek Ramaswamy for the primaries, for crying out loud. But, I mean, this could turn out to be another major spoiler in this entire election season, because as if we haven't had enough of those already, right? RFK Jr. dropping out, endorsing Trump, and getting, you know, a part in his administration, getting a cabinet position, for crying out loud. That would be awesome. That would give Trump a little bit more momentum, and it could possibly pull in a lot of independents that were going to vote for RFK Jr., for crying out loud. I was speculating, and I still wish that Donald Trump would have reached out to RFK Jr. for the vice presidential position, Like, RFK Jr. would make a great vice president. However, I still think he would make a better Secretary of State or Secretary of Human and Health Services or whatever, something like that. Because he is like laser focused on the big pharmaceutical companies and the CDC and all these places for lying about COVID. Yeah, he's a staunch critic of how we handled COVID, especially on Biden for trying to force vaccines on everybody. The vaccine mandate thing. Of course, most of the actual mandates were from private companies. But that didn't stop, Biden was still trying to mandate the entire country. But these people took COVID way too far, in my opinion. But, just for the sake of YouTube, I will say, don't take my word for any of this. It's been stated several times that the vaccines are completely effective, that they work really good, y'all. And talk to your doctor, though. If you have any questions, talk to a doctor. But I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one, y'all. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Would this be a major upset and, give the momentum swing back to Trump? Let me know what you think down in the comments. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.